I'm here with Rex Miller, and let me tell you just a little bit about Rex before we get started. Rex Miller is the principal and thought leader for Mindshift, a future-focused consultancy and organizational performance firm. He has authored a number of powerful books, including The Healthy Workplace Nudge, How Healthy People, Culture, and Buildings Lead to High Performance. Rex has been a certified CoreClarity facilitator for more than a decade and is an expert on the concept of resilience. The focus of our conversation today will be on the intersection of resilience and playing to your strengths. I'm Gary Rifkin, Chief Learning Officer for CoreClarity, and I want to welcome Rex. Rex, how are you doing?
Great, Gary. It's great to be with you, and what an incredible time that we're in. And it's testing all of us, all of our resilience, and I'm looking forward to just talking with you and exploring it deeper.
Yeah. So before we dive in too far, can you give us kind of a little basic definition of what is resilience?
Well, for me, resilience is simply a bounce back factor, getting stronger. Stoic philosophers talked about mindset as a key part of resilience, looking at things that are challenging to you as ways to strengthen your character, push you further, test your strengths. So resilience is simply the ability to take it and come back stronger.
Yeah. And so do we find that at certain times in our lives, our resilience is stronger? Are there certain things that will kind of help us build that?
Well, it ebbs and flows. I mean, there's a lot of factors to it. There's your physical health, there's your relationship circle, there's your just energy level, and then there's mindset. So all of those things play together. And, as you and I know, we kind of ebb and flow through that. We get a little worn out, or something goes wrong, we get setbacks, and we all go through a process of bouncing back. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's quick or slower, depending on what it was.
So this, what a lot of people are calling COVID fatigue that we're in right now in November of 2020, how is that affecting most of us in terms of our resilience?
Well, it's huge. There is a drain. So the balance we have to remember is that we're not designed to be isolated, and we're not designed to be doing this virtual stuff over and over. I just did a post today, and I measured a 90-minute keynote that I did doing this, and it was 758 calories that I burned. Now, yeah, and so the brain takes 20 to 30% of your calories, but in this environment, it's up to 50%. So fatigue then can go into unhealthy coping behaviors, and unhealthy coping behaviors can affect sleep. And then we get into this vicious cycle. So it's really easy in this time period to have our reserves drawn down. And then we have to just be more intentional on rebuilding those reserves. Dr. Jernigan, he's a clinical psychologist that specializes in PTSD and burnout, says that up to 90 million Americans have experienced either a level 1 trauma or level 2 trauma. So that category of the fatigue, the stress fatigue, that over time would fit into that level 2 trauma. And that's huge. I mean, unprecedented. Today in the workforce, pre-pandemic, about 4 in 100 people had some level of PTSD. When we go back, it'll be 3 in 10 will have some form of trauma that they're processing through. So again, that's another drain on our resilience level that is unprecedented. And I'm not sure the workplace is even prepared to know how to deal with that.
Yeah. So we're both really excited about the concept of understanding our talents and strengths.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
As somebody who's been working in this field for a long time now, how is it useful for us to know, number one, our top 5 talents, but then number 2, how those talents kind of fit together in terms of this concept of resilience?
Well, I'll refer to both some of Dr. Clifton's work and Martin Seligman's work. And so these strengths are what you might call those really strong synaptic clusters, what you naturally do best and enjoy most. And we know that when you activate them, you're releasing either dopamine for that kind of enjoyment, pleasure, or if you're in that flow state, it's endorphins. So those are rejuvenating. But most of us don't know what they are. We kind of know, we grew up with a sense, I like this, I don't like this.
Right.
But unless you really specifically know, then you cannot specifically or intentionally play to those strengths and draw on them. So that's why I think it's so important, especially now. When we first started, we didn't really necessarily connect, or I didn't connect the chemical thing that was going on in the brain, the endorphins and the dopamine side. But now it becomes kind of it's a must conversation to have, especially when you're coaching somebody who looks tired or worn out. Then you ask, so what's your day like? And are you playing to your strengths, or do you know how to?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the first exercises that we do in our CoreClarity workshops is what we call a gain or drain exercise, where we have people kind of look at what are the things I'm doing throughout the day that bring me energy, and what are the things throughout the day that kind of drain my energy. And I think what we're seeing is that people are struggling to spend more time in that first column right now.
Yes. Well, and also in the coaching, I can hear people that have, for example, a strength called achiever, which is a get it done strength, saying, I don't feel like any of my work is accomplishing anything.
Oh, yeah.
Or somebody that has strategic, really quick at figuring out where to go, but we don't know where to go. So those strengths are getting constrained or drained, and it's showing up. And you shared with me a month or so ago, you're futuristic. It's hard to see what that future is going to look like.
Right.
Or a positivity. It's hard when every day is bad news. So now what that means for us is knowing that we have to kind of build ourselves up to protect that, be intentional about that.
Yeah. It's interesting, Rex, because one of the things that I figured out after one of the last conversations we had, I was realizing that the fact that in the CoreClarity framework, positivity is what we call a mobilized talent. So it's about lifting other people up. When my positivity was suffering during this, I realized if I reached out to some people to lift them up, it actually made me feel better. It brought me energy.
Nice.
And that was a big aha around the CoreClarity framework. Really helped me to figure that out.
That's nice.
It's really important.
Well, I think that's a good tip too. When the normal ways of keeping score, for example, are gone, finding something else like that, and knowing that you need to feed, you need to feed the strengths, so to speak. So finding a way to check something off your list, something to get done, or reaching out and being a warm voice. That's a great way to feed the strengths.
How would somebody know if they're struggling with their own resilience?
Well, sleep, number one.
Okay.
If you're having a hard time sleeping, energy level, number two. Attitude. Do you tend to get a little, my wife notices when I have a setback that I get a little she calls it prickly. Unhuggable. People around you, if you have good enough relationships, people around you can give you some feedback. Hey, you don't look like your normal self. So it's really important to give people permission. These are all some of the elements that we've been working on. We've got a resilience model called the 6 disciplines for post-traumatic growth.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Well, so it's developed from Dr. Seligman's work with soldiers that came back from PTSD. What they discovered is that there was a small percentage that actually came back more resilient. And so I'm calling that post-traumatic growth. Same kind of trauma. So the second element in that is playing to your strengths. Now, the first element is mindset. And of course, we can help somebody see their natural strengths and how to build the mindset.
Right.
The third one is your relationships, a circle of 5 close relationships. We've added sleep and health to his equation.
Yeah.
Then there's meaning and purpose, and then accomplishment. So what you did is, with the positivity, is change the accomplishment score from what you normally have to another. So those 6 elements are part of our resilience training, and we've just now included it with every coaching session. We do some element of going through those 6 with people.
That's really amazing. And interestingly, hit me even just yesterday, because I had a couple of rough days in terms of the reality of what's going on around us. And going into a workshop yesterday that I was both observing and assisting, I thought, oh, I need to change my mindset, because it's not fair to the people on the other side of the camera in this case. They don't care whether I've had a good day or a bad day. Right. What was fascinating, though, was because I was using my talents and my strengths, when I ended that event, I had loads of energy.
Nice.
So I was using my talents. I was, as you said, playing to the strengths.
So you were getting that endorphin and dopamine recharge. And that, I think what you did, now that's kind of what I would call a Jedi level of using the strengths. Just knowing in the moment that I can shift that energy, and recognizing that strengths and energy go side to side. Right. So if you can shift it. For example, for me, an example of that was when my son and I finished a workshop several years ago. He's got 3 of the relational strengths: harmony, communication, relator. Okay. I've got 1 relational strength. So we get in the car and I shut down completely because I've got 3 of those cognitive strengths. So I went into my head to recover. Right. So he tells me, Dad, why did you go from engaged dad in the car to boring dad in the car? I mean, engaged dad in the workshop to boring dad. And I said, wow, that's a good question. But what I recognized is that he was not able to use any of those relational strengths during the workshop. So he had a need.
That's right.
I was able to shift my energy with my learner, my curiosity. So I just started asking him questions, and the effort really came back. What did you think? What did you learn? What would you do differently? So what you demonstrated was what I call a Jedi level of strengths awareness and the ability to shift the force to recharge.
Well, and what's interesting is that the Jedi part of it was not so Jedi at all. It was really just a matter of, as a longtime speech coach, I've always told people it's always about your audience. So as I was getting ready for that event, I went into that mode of, it's not about me right now. It's about the people that are on the call or in the meeting or in the workshop. And that shifted my mindset. So what I need to do is figure out, when I'm in a different kind of setting, how can I still shift the mindset?
Well, can I play off that mindset thing for a second?
Great.
Because that's the number 1 element in the post-traumatic growth. It's mindset. And so I think that's another important thing you were just saying. I knew what my mind had to be, how I need to focus my mind for that event and for those people. So that's another part of the equation too in resiliency, is knowing how to have the proper mindset of what we're going into. What's the purpose? What's the why? And then going down to the meaning purpose, number 5 in that is, what is it that I'm doing that's bigger than me and that's beyond me that I can put myself into? And all of that mindset, playing to your strengths, sleep, that's all rejuvenating, purpose, meaning, that's all recharging and helps give you that reserve, so that when there is a drain, you can bounce back instead of getting in that deficit mode.
Okay. It's like your bank account. You've got savings, and at a time when maybe things are rough, you dip into the savings. This is your own kind of energy savings.
Yeah. The warning, though, is once you get into that deficit mode, you tend to you lose awareness of what's happening, and then you get into that vicious cycle. And then you might need some friends. That's where you need that circle of 5 to say, hey, Rex, last 2 days, not so Rex. I don't see that positive. You tend to be a little negative. You reacted here. That's when we need our friends and the permission that they have to speak to us.
So, because otherwise, going back to the money analogy, then we start using our credit cards instead of dipping into savings.
Yeah, and so so what we do know is that stress is the number one driver of unhealthy coping behaviors, which include comfort food,
Right. Yeah.
alcohol.
I know that one.
Yeah. Alcohol, sedentary, binge watching, whatever.
Right.
And then what that leads to is disruption of sleep. So we might take a sleeping medication, which doesn't help you sleep. It just makes you unconscious. It doesn't help. And then the next day you feel drained. And then what do? You go for some sugar or some caffeine, and then you're back in. So that's a real telltale sign. Is just watch those if you need a boost. If you feel like I'm so drained at the end of the day, now what are a few healthy alternatives that you can choose?
Good. So I want to go back a second to the second rung of this was the playing to your strengths.
Right. Yep.
So let's say for a moment that we've got people who have taken the CliftonStrengths assessment, so they know their top 5, but then they don't know anything else. How do we help them play to those strengths?
Well, the first I would say is understand what each strength means. So if you take the little book, the Strength Finder 2.0, and you just read and underline the sentences that you feel you look like at your best day.
Okay.
That helps you begin to internalize what it looks like.
Right.
And then the next step is do a modified version of gain or drain. Just be aware. What was I energized? What strength could that have been? And begin building first the understanding, then the feeling of it.
Yep.
And then beginning to understand what it looks like under pressure. I mean, those are things you can begin doing if you've taken the strengths, the CliftonStrengths, you've got the resource. Right. So begin tailoring it by underlining and making this your version of these 5 strengths.
So Rex, let me ask you, how does the CoreClarity model help you to do that with people?
For me, it was like the movie The Matrix, at the very end of the movie where all this stuff comes.
Yeah.
And, I had taken the CliftonStrengths in 2002, and it was okay, but what you get are the themes. So every strength that they give you is a range.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily tailored. And then when I added CoreClarity, it was very personal. I mean, it was, you're 1 in 33,600,000 combinations of those top 5.
Right.
But when you add the CoreClarity, now I know the energy. It's like a deck of cards. Now I know what the combinations mean, the patterns mean, the archetypes. It gives me a whole new range of tailoring and understanding that I didn't have before. Energy fields, I've got one strength in the relationship quadrant.
Yeah, what we call the connect quadrant. Yeah.
And so when I go back to my son, I said, Nathan, I have one strength that is energized by relationships, and I spent it with that group. Now I don't want to see anybody. Yeah. And so I never had that kind of framework or vocabulary to even explain to my son why I was tired or energized or whatever.
Yeah, I love that. And what has helped me a lot is that because each quadrant has its own kind of intentionality, that connect or reflect or energize or mobilize, I know when I need to spend more time on reflect, then I go to my strategic talent. And I'm like, let me figure out how this is sorting out. When it's now time to energize, I go to my activator talent and figure out how do I get myself going. And so I love the intentionality of it all. And I think that has helped me to play to my strengths more effectively.
Well, and with those quadrants too, what's really helped me as well is I've begun to think of each quadrant as either an energy field or a language.
Okay.
So it helps me understand that I speak a dialect in the connect. I speak the trust language or dialect, but I'm not highly fluent because I've got only one dialect.
Right.
In the green, I've got 3.
Yeah, you sure do.
So, and it helps me know where to go. So from a resilience, I know what I need to do to recharge, and I need to go into my cognitive reflect zone.
Yep.
And my energize, achiever, get it done zone and create. I need to create, write, think, reflect, journal. I know that now. I didn't know it. I didn't know what I needed to do or why I needed to do it, but now I do.
Excellent. So I'm kind of backtracking for a second. So number 1 was mindset. Number 2 was playing to your strengths. 3 was about your health and well-being.
3 is what I call your circle of 5.
Oh, circle of 5. Right.
Yeah.
So
people would call at 2 a.m. in the morning and they would come to they would come and help you. Now they may chew you out, but they would still come. And one of those individuals, if possible, should be a close colleague at work, somebody you feel safe and a trusted colleague at work. And we know the Gallup research on having that trusted individual.
Right. And is it possible that that individual can shift over time? And is that actually healthy? Like to go from one question, I've got this colleague for this and this colleague for that in terms of the emotional health.
Well, going back to the strengths, I think your circle will be somewhat shaped by your strengths.
Yeah.
Because I've got that relator. So I've got a very tight, long-standing core of people. But, my daughter gets energy, she's got positivity and she loves the group she's with is her vital group at that time.
Yeah.
So I think that has something to do with how we do that.
Well, so what struck me just now as you said that is that I realized that for each of the quadrants, I have a different kind of person on our staff. Like when I need my headspace, like I need somebody to help me sort out relationship things, I go to Mandy. When I need somebody to help me with my energy, I go to Becca. And when I need somebody to help me kind of process concepts, I go to Candace. So it's interesting that you say that I use the 3 of them in different ways as part of those vital friends.
Well, in your leadership style, you've got strengths in all the quadrants.
Right.
And I don't. So I naturally, go into my head or reflect, and then I'll be very selective on who I go and talk to, but it's usually the same group. It doesn't change much because of my relator side of things.
All right. So 1 was the mindset. 2 is playing to your strengths. 3 is your
circle of 5.
Circle of 5. 4,
sleep and health. And I put sleep first because I think that is the one that's most missing in people's equation.
Yeah.
And 70% of the adult population is considered to be sleep deprived.
Yeah.
And I started my journey on sleep about 2016. And I actually have got several trackers. You can see 3 trackers here.
Oh my goodness, you're covered.
Yeah. And I've got another one I put on at night. But part of that is because we consult in that area. And so I need to know, one, I'm a geek on that because I've got 3 cognitive strengths. So, input, connectedness, learner, strategic. It's a geek It's a geek quality. Yeah. But at the same time, helping coach people into better sleep habits is something that we've been doing. And where I feel people will get the biggest bounce or biggest return on their intentionality in terms of resiliency by just rebuilding that sleep habit.
So I want to add something to that I think might fit there, or you might tell me it fits in a different spot. But with COVID, a lot of people are not getting to have their vacations the way they used to. Is that a part of this too? Like you don't get that downtime, that life balance issue that I'm curious.
Yeah, totally. I mean, just think how many hours people are spending in front of this. Right. And then you got family. And then if you're educating too, if you've become the little schoolhouse. That's
right.
There's just
every parent now is a teacher's assistant.
There's not many respites in this new area. And I'll tell you what, I'm coaching right now about 50 to 60 people. And I've started noticing, there was good resilience in April, May, June, then June, July started to see kind of the fade. And now I'd say 20 or so%. We spend the first couple minutes just kind of,
How are you doing? Yeah.
this is killing me.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And so then the fifth one is about kind of a purpose focus,
Meaning
right?
and purpose. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
would put that under the Viktor Frankl kind of,
And search for meaning. Yeah.
yeah, agency, being able to, if you can't change the circumstances, he says you can change yourself. If you can't control, you can control the environment, you can control your response.
Yep.
So that would also relate to Stoic philosophy. If you're in, Stoicism is becoming a new popular thing with a couple of the writers out there, but it's really about finding that daily purpose and meaning in anything you do.
Yeah. Good. And then the sixth one is what?
The sixth one is accomplishment.
Okay.
Daily accomplishment, which again ties back to strengths because, if you're activating your strengths, that's the new form. What you did with positivity is another way of keeping score and feeling like, I touched my 5 strengths today, or I had a moment of gratitude, or I kept my routine today.
Nice.
Those are the new kinds of ways of keeping score we need to look at.
Yeah, so it's interesting you say that because as I think about the fact that the achiever talent, which as you've referenced and you have, is about getting a lot of things done and checking things off the list, that's the most prevalent talent in our database. 34% of the population have achiever in their top 5. Yeah. But for the other 66%, they have to be thinking about, you don't have to measure accomplishments on a piece of paper. And so what you just said, I think is so powerful, is that at the end of each day, we should spend maybe a minute or two looking back on the day and saying, how did I feed each of my 5 top talents? And what was some of the output of that? Like, who did I touch because of that in some way?
Well, and by doing that, you're reinforcing in your brain,
goes back to mindset,
bit of mental rehearsal of do it again, wash, rinse, repeat, wash, rinse, repeat.
It's and a cycle.
You build a virtuous cycle or a flywheel that, and that's what I'm hearing from a lot of individuals is, did I just become a little better version of myself today, and a little better version of myself today, and a little more on purpose today, and a little more this today, and a little more that today? But unless you're recording it, like you said, then it just gets washed away.
Yeah.
So journaling, I lightly journaled. Now I'm just, journal every day. And just as a way of keeping track of where was I today, and then looking back, say, wow, look at where I've gotten.
Well, and something that I want all the viewers to keep in mind is that journaling no longer has to be with a pen or with a keyboard. You can journal by just opening up whatever recorder app you have on your phone and just talking, and it will then transcribe it for you. So for those of us who are like, I don't really want to sit and journal, well, you don't have to sit and journal. You can walk around your house. That way you're getting some more time on your Fitbit, and you can record it into whatever recording app you might have on your iPhone or Android or whatever. So another way to do it. So we're right at the bottom of the hour. So I'd love 2 things. First, tell us, if we wanted to know more from you, how do we reach you? And then 2, what is like a last thought for people around this concept of resilience as we continue to move through what has become a very difficult year?
Well, so one, rexmiller.com is the easy way to get me, or rex@rexmiller.com.
Okay.
But what I'm shifting to is shifting away from talking about mental health to brain health. Because it really is, there's a lot of physiology that turns into kind of emotional challenges, but it's really loving your brain, taking good care of your brain, playing to your strengths, giving it the rest, giving it the hydration, giving it kind of the relational, the connection, the serotonin, really take good care of your brain and get a good night's sleep. I think if this country, just imagine if the whole country got a whole week of a great night's sleep, I think maybe we might have more tolerance and the ability to actually have civil conversations with one another.
I love that. Rex, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome.
For those of you that want to reach us, we are CoreClarity.net. You can go to our website and learn more about our offerings. You'll find Rex there along with the other many dozens of certified facilitators that can help you learn more about CoreClarity. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Take care.